The Steamship Authority is a proud partner in many Falmouth community events, including town meeting coverage. And for good reason. Not only do we have a terminal and offices here, about 1/3 of our employees call Falmouth their home. We always work hard to serve our neighbors, friends, and the traveling public. We recently put 7 new electric buses into service at our Falmouth parking lots. Soon we'll be adding new vessels to our fleet, continuing work on our energy-efficient Woods Hole terminal buildings, and adding solar panels at our largest parking lot. At the Steamship Authority, we're serving the islands. And you.
Good evening. I'd like to open the meeting for the Falmouth Select Board. It is Monday, December 18th, 2023. I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, police, lieutenant, impact bargaining.
So moved. Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye. Do we need
By
a
roll call.
Yeah. Zelinski, aye.
Muscali, aye.
Brown, aye.
Taylor, aye. And the board will return to public session at 6:30. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to the Falmouth Select Board meeting. It is Monday, December 18th, 2023. The board has just returned from executive session where we have come to an agreement on collective bargaining with the police lieutenant union. I would ask you at this time to please silence your cell phones. And if anyone is doing an audio or video recording of this meeting, of this public meeting, please notify me as the chair. Okay, I would ask you to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll move into recognitions. I would like to begin, if that's okay with the board, to recognize our Falmouth Fire Department and also to ask you all to keep the 3 firefighters who were involved in a 3-alarm fire this weekend, and 3 of our men were injured. So I would just ask that you please keep them in your thoughts and prayers, and think of their families at this difficult time. Thank you. Any other recognitions?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Muscali?
Just a couple. One, I'd like to recognize Daria and Michael Kasparian, who will be this year's recipients of the Falmouth Education Fund awards in March 2024. Mike, as everyone knows, I think is head of the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce, and Daria has been a long-time teacher in the Falmouth schools, just recently retired. I'd also like to recognize Tamsin George, who was a member of the CPC and the Historical Commission for many years. She was a 2023 finalist among the annual Best Book Awards presented by American Book Fest for her book, her first book, entitled Allegiance, Life and Times of William Eustis, an Early American Patriot.
Thank you, Mr. Muscali.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown?
On behalf of our Select Board member, Angela Scott Price, I want to recognize the DPW for another beautiful display at the Village Green. Angela and her husband, Andre, just had a little baby, Liliana, so I guess all's well, and Angela and her husband are at home tonight with the baby. She sent us a picture and what a little cutie. And so I guess with being a new mom, she's got a renewed appreciation for Christmas decorations. So thanks to the DPW for doing such a nice job again this year.
Great, thank you. Any other recognitions from the board? Okay, we'll move into announcements. And I have one announcement, and that is due to the Comcast channel lineup changes effective immediately, FCTV Government Channel 15 is moving to Channel 9. And for additional viewing options, please go to www.fctv.org. Any other announcements from the board? and you stole the O.J. Angela Scott Price
Oh, I'm
announcement.
sorry, but I had to-
Yes, Liliana, 8 pounds, 19 inches long, and she was born on 12/14.
Yeah,
So,
I thought she was gonna have twin boys, but just a big girl.
she has no twins. Okay, any other announcements from the board?
Just, if I could, just
Yes.
another recognition for the East Falmouth Village Association first holiday festival. We had a really great time. Dale Tree donated a actual live Christmas tree this year, so it's out by the Santa display. The whole thing went really well, a lot of fun, and the Grinch caused a little trouble, but the kids were able to tackle him and get him under control. We were able to light the tree. It was pretty fun. It was a good time.
Jen Bowman has been a driving
Oh, my
force for
goodness.
that, and
Yeah, she has really brought this
her
to the
and
next level.
Bobby were the,
Yeah, Bob was the Santa
Santa
Claus.
Claus, yeah.
And she was the helper.
yeah, she's been a driving force for that, to get involved in that
Yeah,
community. so-
really,
so
really-
I applaud her for that
It's
as
really
well.
nice.
Great, thank you. Anything
I'm
else?
sorry, Jess
from the
Bowman,
board?
not Jen.
Yes, right.
Okay, we'll move into public comment. Public comment may be made on routine matters not on the agenda this evening. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes. Please introduce yourself, and since the matter has not been included on the agenda, the Select Board will not participate in any debate of your topic. Anyone here for public comment? Yes. I'll take you next, okay? Yes, go ahead, I saw you first.
Hello again. I was Nan Logan, Precinct 1 and Falmouth Gun Safety Coalition. As you remember, I was here a couple weeks ago when we were all at another select board meeting, and since that time, I think you all realize that there was a very interesting article that came out in the New York Times and was also reprinted in the Boston Globe, talking about the disposition of firearms in towns when they were under the impression that what they were doing was having the firearms destroyed, and what actually was happening was that the gun parts were all repurposed, sold, and virtually the guns were back on the streets. They were back in circulation again. So this was a concern to me as we think about the disposition of our shotguns that is coming up. I believe there's some decisions to be made there. So had some conversations with various places in the last week. What we found when we had the gun buyback, we also tripped over the gun busters. We had 100 guns that we were disposing of. People had donated them so that they would get destroyed instead of put back into circulation. When I found out that gun busters was actually just going to cut them up, make all the money by repurposing the guns, the pieces essentially. Then we went and we found a scrap metal dealer that actually destroyed the guns while we watched with a police escort. So it was a really nice relationship with the police department, with the scrap metal dealer, was happy to do it, stayed open extra on Saturday afternoon to do that. So that's one option. There's a scrap metal dealer in Middleborough who I can give you the contact information for, who has indicated he'd be willing to talk about doing that for the town. But the option that I think would be a lot more interesting and creative and positive is one that I mentioned to you all in some emails, and that's a group called Swords into Plowshares, and they're willing to come up, destroy the guns publicly for us. And you can just imagine, if you will, that because, you know, there was such a sense of support for this a year ago, that people...
You're at your time.
Okay, I'll send you the information on email how we can do that, and I suggest that you just make this happen the right way.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, please. Thank you. You may start.
Good evening. My name is Tammy Gilbert. I live at 26 Hawks Way. I know you've got a packed agenda, so I appreciate you allowing me to make a public comment about the proposed gate at mile 6.7 on the Shining Sea bike path. I will be under 2 minutes. As you may be aware, residents have used this historic right-of-way for hundreds of years. Easements appear to be written into deeds. The only reasonable access to town-owned and Salt Pond-owned land on Black Beach is this public right-of-way over private roads, which may indicate an easement by necessity. According to a local attorney, An easement by adverse possession may also apply in this situation, as the roads have been used openly, obviously, and consistently for more than 20 years. Just because the Black Beach Harborhead Civic Association says that this is a legal effort, does not mean that it is, in fact, legal. I appeal to the Select Board to prohibit this gate from being constructed until such a time that it is determined that there is a legal right to do so. I sent an email to the town manager on December 12th, asking him to direct a legal review. I haven't received a response yet. If it is within the scope of responsibility of this board, I appeal to you to please solicit advice from an established real estate attorney experienced in this area of the law. The truth is important. The Neighborhood Association treasurer indicated in writing that they have wanted a gate since 2009. They have been gradually restricting access through these roads over a number of years, first by installing signage, then hiring security guards, and now an effort to block access with a physical gate. Make no mistake, this is not about safety or speeding, and is certainly not to benefit the West Falmouth community as a whole. This is what could be an illegal attempt to create a private gated community, allowing them exclusive access to public resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone? Mr. Doobie?
Richard Doobie, Precinct 6. On May 23rd of 2022, this board unanimously approved a policy. Part of that policy, it said the select board herein grants to the town manager the authority to dispose of surplus firearms. And we assume that town council was consulted when this policy was written. And we'd sort of like to know why anyone but the town manager is now involved in this policy, and why Mr. Linsky is consulting with town council as far as this is concerned, and more importantly, who the other side is that Mr. Zielinski referred to, that he is seeking an agreement with so that both sides are happy. And if there is going to be a change, can this be placed on the agenda for discussion in an upcoming meeting of this board, and one that is involved prior to any changes taking place? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Wayne Lingefelter. I'm the Executive Director for the Falmouth EDIC, offices at 20 Academy Lane. The EDIC directors made an important decision at their board meeting last week regarding the Falmouth station. Our timing didn't allow me to make a presentation or an appearance at your regular meeting, so I'd like to make a brief statement tonight to the Select Board. The EDIC operates the Falmouth station under a long-term lease with Mass DOT. You'll recall that the EDIC completed a restoration of the station in 2017. The station continues to serve as an important transportation hub for the community and a rest stop along the Shining Sea Bikeway. The Falmouth station has 3 tenants: Peter Pan Bus Lines, Plymouth and Brockton, and the Station Grill. John Marcelino has operated the Station Grill for the past 5 years, and his lease with the EDIC expires at the end of this month. Mr. Marcelino has no rights to renew his tenancy in the station. As a quasi-public body, the EDIC has an obligation to openly compete any lease in this state-owned property in accordance with Massachusetts procurement regulations. The EDIC board evaluated the operation of the Station Grill and concluded that in its current configuration, it is unlikely to be sustainable. The Station Grill has paid approximately 70% of its financial obligations over the past 2 years, and in 2023, the grill operated just 30% of the days required by the lease agreement with the EDIC. Rather than hold an open solicitation to operate in the current format, as would be required by mass regulations, the board is going to step back and consider a range of alternatives to potentially reuse the cafe space at the station. Our focus will be on historic character of the station, the role the station plays in greeting visitors to Falmouth, and the potential return of bus company staff, as well as alternative convenience food concessions. We anticipate the station's public space, other than the vestibule, to be closed through January. Beginning in early February, we plan to open the station for use by
Mr. Lingefelder,
patrons.
you're at your time
Can I
for public comment.
Can I appeal for one more.
1 second, go.
1 second. Finally, Mr. Marcelino recently made public accusations about unpaid services. I'd like the Select Board to know that I explained to Mr. Marcelino in person and in writing that his only responsibility at the station was to operate the grill. In no manner does the EDIC expect.
Okay, I'm going to need to cut you off.
Service.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comment? Oh, Mr. Moriarty.
Happy holidays, everyone. Dave Moriarty, Precinct 6. I've just become aware that the Mayflower, aka South Coast Wind, is actually has come to raise the dead at the Oak Grove Cemetery. They've had a meeting with the Oak Grove Cemetery. They want to build their 6-acre subplant for their wind factory.
Please speak to the board.
Excuse me. Right next to the graveyard. One of our greatest citizens of Falmouth happens to be buried in that graveyard, Catherine Lee Bates. That graveyard's on the National Register. And I do believe it's illegal to be building around a property that's on the National Register. I just wanted to make that clear. And we would like to have, the citizens would like to have another info meeting with the South Coast Wind folks as soon as possible. We have many more news concerns that we have to address, and we would like that meeting as soon as we could have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, we will move into public hearings. And I would ask you, Mr. Zelinski, to please read the notice.
Fiscal year 2024 tax clarification hearing notice. Falmouth Select Board will hold a public hearing on Monday, December 18th, 2023 at 6:45 p.m. in the Select Board Meeting Room, Town Hall, 59 Town Hall Square, Falmouth, Mass. Under Chapter 40, Section 56, as amended by Chapter 369 of the Acts of 1982, Chapter 9, and Chapter 79 of Acts of 1983, the Falmouth Select Board will conduct a public hearing on whether the town of Falmouth should implement the Classification Act. At said hearing, the Select Board will hear a presentation regarding the allocation of the fiscal 2024 tax levy, which will determine the share of taxes which each property classification shall pay. The Board of Assessors shall provide all information and data relevant to making a decision of allocating the tax burden, including the fiscal effects of the available options, per order of the Select Board. Nancy Taylor, Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Welcome.
Good morning, Tricia Fafuli, good evening. Tricia Fafuli, Director of Assessing, Madam Chair, Board members, Mr. Renshaw, and Mr. Johnson-Staub. Where a year went from last year, I don't know, but we had a little entertainment last year, so we'll get through this hopefully in a brief period. I'm just going to go through some of your options that you have tonight for your votes under the tax classification hearing. Your first option, you'll have 3 that you'll have to vote on individually. You'll have a residential vote for a single tax rate. Our new tax rate is $6.28 per thousand, going down from $6.92, which is a difference of 64 cents. With that single tax rate, the Board of Assessors recommend a residential factor of 1. With that residential factor, that would be giving 1 residential factor for the whole town with that 1 single rate. Your other options would be the adoption of a small commercial exemption, which would grant a tax reduction of up to 10% to commercial properties assessed at less than $1 million and fewer than 10 employees. Many of our small commercial businesses are not property owners, and this exemption, if granted, would shift the higher tax rate to the commercial industrial properties, which would cause a rise in their taxes, and the full vote would go to the tenants, and that would shift their rate over to them. The Board of Assessors on that recommends not adopting a small commercial exemption. The next adoption would be the adoption of an open space exemption, which involves open space properties, which typically are open space set aside by the planning board for subdivisions within the town. Currently, we assess all of those parcels as unbuildable, so they have a very low tax rate and value. The Board of Assessors recommend not adopting an open space exemption. And your last one would be the adoption of a residential exemption, which can shift up to, but not more than 35% of the residential domiciled properties that are owner-occupied. Must be a principal resident on January 1st. Taxpayer is the owner, must be reported as their primary on the Massachusetts state income tax. Adoption of a residential exemption, which would redistribute up to that 35% of the average assessed residential value from domiciled properties to non-domiciled properties. The Board of Assessors on this will also recommend not adopting a residential exemption. I'll just give you some brief facts on the values and the residential exemption. Our average value this year is $879,680.
Wow.
Average tax bill would be $5,524. A residential exemption is a misnomer, as it is actually shifting the rate among residential values due to the fact that that amount that is granted is via the exemption. So when you're taking and granting the exemptions to the lower value homes, you're taking that off of the base taxes, which is causing the base tax rate to go up to cover that shortfall that we'd be granting to the lower valued homes. If in that event that you would take into that consideration, it would be a process that the assessor's office would have to study over an 18-month period. It's going to affect our software programs, our assessing program. We're anticipating about 10,000 applications for a residential exemption. So it's something that's going to have to take a while to be vetted out. And I know in the past you had questions on that residential exemption. One of the things that with Ed Centio joining us, he had suggested to the Board of Assessors that we change some of our exemptions that might offset some of the folks that are having some difficulties. So at our last town meeting, we adopted a $1,000 exemption for seniors. And we also dropped the age level. It was 70, we've now dropped it to 65. So I'm estimating probably about another 100 applications. Right now, we are about to grant 368 applications. And I'm estimating probably around 100 that we would get for seniors. And we also raised the blind exemption to $500. So I'm expecting that we'll probably get a few other folks that would qualify for that blind exemption. So by granting those additional exemptions, I think we're trying to level the playing field of values and the amount of taxes that they're paying. So if you have any questions, I'd open it up to questions that you might have on any of the options.
Questions from the board? Mr. Brown?
I would still like to pursue the residential exemption. I think that, we do talk about it each year, that it's a big thing to take on, but I would like to start to pursue it. I hope the board would support it. I know Mashpee just went from 25 to 35%, so they've implemented it, so it can be done.
Definitely can be done.
And I know it's a big job, and I'm not asking to have it done today, but I would like to move forward toward that direction, because I think it's something that really could help our local year-round residents when they're faced with these astronomical values. $879,000 for the average price?
The average.
That's a pretty scary number, and, a lot of people here are on limited income, so I just think it's something we need to work toward, and I know it's a long-term process, but I would like to initiate it and at least start to look into it.
I'll just give you some interesting factors from the Department of Revenue. In the town of Falmouth, the average tax bill is 11% of the annual base income of an average taxpayer. Dennis is 8%. Eastham is 13%, and they have a residential exemption. Provincetown is 14% of their annual income, and they have a residential exemption. Truro, residential exemption, 14%. And Barnstable is 12%. So that just, we think that residential exemption is something that balances out the playing field for everybody, when in fact, the towns that have adopted that, it's actually costing taxpayers more. So that'll just give you something to think about. It's not the all be that we always think it is. But we certainly can take a look at it.
Well, I appreciate that, but it's the lower income people that I'm more concerned with, honestly, because we have a lot of folks here that have adequate income to pay their taxes, so I would like to at least look into it.
Mr. Muscali,
Yeah,
did you
just
have a?
one question. The 10,000 applications that you assume might come, where does that number come from? I mean, you'd have to be a primary, it would have to be your primary residence. So do we think that there are 10,000 households that are actually primary owner-occupied in Falmouth? It seems a pretty high number.
So right now, we have a little over 18,000 single-family residences and a little over 2,000 condominiums. So if you do the numbers, we have roughly about 7,500 second homeowners that are declared second homeowners. There's going to be a percentage of people that are not declaring their second home to avoid paying a personal property tax. So that's where we're getting that number. That's our estimated number based on the total of residential homes and condominiums. That's not even looking at some multifamily homes where they're owner-occupied. So they have to be owner-occupied, they have to have a Massachusetts tax return stating that this is their domicile. And we would also have to vet out trusts and limited liability companies. With that factor, you have to be looking if, are they a trustee, are they a beneficiary of the trust? Limited liability is very, very limited on who would qualify on that. So that's where that $10,000 comes from, 10,000 accounts come from.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
I will say that I do agree with Mr. Brown, that I think it's something I'd like to see explored if possible.
At least just get an idea of how much trouble it's gonna be to do, and whether or not you find a way that's maybe feasible.
Any public comment on this hearing? Seeing none.
I'm sorry,
Go
I have
ahead.
one question for
Yes.
Mrs. Favuli. Mrs. Favuli, to Mr. Muscali and Mr. Brown's point, what you found out, could there be an adjustment at another town meeting to help with their concerns with that certain percentage of taxpayer, or the lower income?
To raise the exemption for our seniors?
Yes, some more.
Sure, the town has the ability to do that. That's a local option to raise that amount.
So would that be easier to do with a town meeting article to try to address that than across the board and affect the big picture on that?
Yeah, you would reach more people, you know,
And we'd identify them, I mean, more easily, right?
absolutely.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
And that would have to be a local option that we would have to write legislation on, which is certainly
Just ask the
something that we
question,
can
but-
do. Right.
yeah.
You know, we also have to think that when we're looking at some of the lower income, are they actually owner-occupied homes that they're living, or are they tenants? So we have to also look at that too.
Right.
Because no landlord would qualify for any type of residential exemption. So we need to take that into consideration. You know, there's other avenues, some other towns are looking at some assistance for tenants to help them with that. There's other programs that we could also look at too.
Yeah, I'm just more thinking of, people who bought a home 4 or 5 years ago. Now, they've got this unexpected change in their tax bill,
Correct.
so that's my
Understood.
point. But if
You
there's
have to
other ways
al-
to do it that are simpler, I'd be interested to learn about that as well.
You also have to also acknowledge that there's gonna be a cutoff between 900,000 and $1 million, that for residential exemption, those folks over that amount are gonna pay more in tax dollars. The folks below that will pay less. So that's a trigger too, and we also have a lot of seniors that are living in those 1 million and over homes, our veterans, our older folks that are living in those too. So we really need to study the effect that is gonna be on everybody.
I know if we're at 879, that's most of us, right? We're
Yeah.
getting close to the edge on that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
No, do you have something you want to say? Come up to the podium.
How are you?
Karen Bissonette. I'm just, as a citizen and a taxpayer, I think this is a wonderful idea because most of us, some of us who have lived here quite a while, right, our houses are worth a heck of a lot of money, but we don't intend to go anywhere, so we're not going to recognize that value. My children will benefit from it, but I don't plan on selling my house. So I think it's a wonderful idea, and because it is astronomical, as everyone knows. And it's just going to go up because the real estate market is just crazy, and we have, 33 houses for sale in Falmouth, and that is it. So it will continue to rise. And I know that in November, the median price home of the sale in Falmouth was $870,000. So
Yeah.
it's not going anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Any other public comment? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
just one last comment.
Go ahead.
Just that
Sure.
this is pretty much what we've said each of the last 3 years.
Mhm.
We've talked about, let's look into it, and it hasn't really gone anywhere, so should we, Bob's in favor, I'm kind of in favor.
Are we looking for a vote tonight? Or
We are.
just a discussion?
This is an approval.
I'm not looking to vote.
I know, I'm just saying, we're holding a hearing, but I didn't know if we were expecting
Yes, Madam Chair, we are expecting a vote.
Okay,
of
thank you.
approval.
I just needed that clarification.
I'm not trying to undermine the recommendation of the assessor. I'm just trying to get a sense of the board, if we can direct staff to really look into it this year, to tell us what it would really take, how much budgetary input we're gonna have to actually consider it, maybe for next year?
So let's close the hearing,
Okay.
and we'll continue this conversation.
Okay.
So I'll entertain a motion to
Move
close
the closure of the
hearing.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
So I think what I hear you saying, Mr. Brown, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we've been here 3 different times. We've said the same thing. We don't want to undermine the recommendation of the assessor. And it sounds to me like you want 2 things: to go along with the recommendation of the assessor, while at the same time directing staff to be looking more aggressively into this, so that when and if it comes, it will come
When it
in
comes,
front of us again next year at the same time,
we'll have a little more information.
we have something else to consider.
Right.
or some alternatives.
Yeah, and if the other alternatives that Mr. Zelinski brought up prove to be more favorable, I'd be interested in that as well.
Is that a motion?
Is that a vote? Are we gonna vote? It's just a sense of the board, I think. It's
Well-
not on for vote, but,
Well, I
You.
think, but I've asked, and specifically, they're looking for a vote.
well, then I would move
Am I
that we
correct?
direct the town manager to look into what we can do to either engage the residential exemption or look into the alternative that Mr. Zelinski proposed, which is perhaps more relief for people that are in lower income brackets.
While
Whether
approving,
it's-
while approving this budget.
While
proposal.
And I-
approving the recommendation of the.
Exactly. I'll approve this one as proposed and as recommended by the assessor.
Okay, and we need to make sure we look at the recommendation.
Should that be 2 separate
The motion.
motions?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You absolutely have to keep
Yeah.
those 2
Right.
separate,
That's
because
what I
We'll keep
thought.
it
if you
clean.
mix it as one, you're granting,
Yep,
Right.
okay.
Okay.
And to be clear, Madam Chair and board members, there is a recommended motion that
and
includes
we
all
need
3.
to stick to the recommended motions that we have printed, because that
Okay.
keeps it much cleaner if you would do that. So I think, Mr. Brown, if you want to make the motion, while at the same time.
Got it? I've got it.
Okay, go ahead.
I move that the town of Falmouth continues to tax all classes at the same rate by adopting a factor of 1, and to reject the residential, commercial, and open space exemption.
Second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr.
And
Brown?
Secondly, I'd like to request, I make a motion that we direct town manager to look into options for implementing the residential exemption or other more practical alternatives that may be out there.
And can we include in that, and I don't know how this works, and the hearing's closed, so I can't ask the question, but people who are in some of our affordable or attainable housing, is there any
I think that
relief
would be by
there?
default with the income,
I would hope so, but
Okay.
I just want to make sure that, because we're trying to do something around that issue, so, but I will go with your motion.
okay. Well,
So we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second Mr. Brown's motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. We will move into discuss and vote to approve the funding for 5 Esker Place. I'm going to send this over to Mr. Renshaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Real quickly, I understand Mrs. Bissonette is in the audience as well to answer any questions. As a background summary, the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund received an application from Falmouth Housing Trust requesting $73,859. The property at 5 Esker Place was entering foreclosure, and the homeowner passed away intestate. The Falmouth Housing Trust worked with her children to go through probate to give them the authority to sell the property to the Housing Trust, and thereby saving it from foreclosure. The Falmouth Housing Trust rehabbed the home, and in your packets this evening, you have kind of before and after photographs, kind of describing the condition prior to and after the rehab. Rehabbed the home and secured a new deed restriction in perpetuity. The restriction that was on the property was due to expire in 2029. At its meeting back on November 22nd of this year, the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund Working Group gave a favorable recommendation, and at its meeting on December 7th of this year, the Community Preservation Committee also gave a favorable recommendation. Madam Chair and Select Board members, the Housing Coordinator is recommending that the Select Board support and approve the application. There is a recommended motion in your packet, and I also concur with the Housing Coordinator and recommend the Select Board approve the application.
And I'm part of the working group, and we had a whole presentation, and all of the information, I hope everybody got to take a look at it. It was pretty intense. It was a ton of work, and I certainly would support it.
I would have to, if I could comment, that I
Yes,
think
go right ahead.
under $74,000 to save that house and put it in affordability in perpetuity is a really good value. So I would move approval.
And there was a lot of work going on to make this happen in terms of the courts. It was quite something. Mr. Muscali?
I'd just like to publicly recognize and commend Ms. Bissonette and Ms. Fish for the work that they've put into this effort. It's really monumental and much appreciated by the town.
I was going to ask Ms. Fish to come to the podium to do just that, so
Good
thank you,
idea.
Mr. Muscali.
You saved me from publicity.
Okay, so we have,
Do you have the motion? You want it read into the...
I would like the motion
Okay.
that is in your packet read, please.
I'll move it if you want me to read it.
Go
I'll get it
ahead,
right here.
sure.
Madam Chair, I move that the board acting as trustees of the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund grant $73,859 to Falmouth Housing Trust, FHT, to reimburse them a portion of the cost to rehabilitate the property at 5 Esker Place and put an affordable deed restriction in perpetuity on the property, and authorize the town manager to execute a commitment letter and grant agreement setting forth the terms of the financial award to the Falmouth Housing Trust.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move to approve one-time 5-year extension of the solid waste management intermunicipal agreement with the town of Bourne. Mr. Renshaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Select Board. Our DPW Director, Peter McConerty, is here this evening. I'm going to ask Peter to kind of run through the summary and then ultimately give his recommendation. Peter?
Thank you, Peter McConerty, Director of Public Works. In January 1st, 2015, we began a 10-year contract with the Bonn Integrated Solid Waste Municipal Facility, and it expires on December 31st, 2024. Under the agreement, the town of Falmouth has a one-time extension permission with the town of Bourne that has to be we need to let the town of Bourne know 1 year in advance, so we have, the limit is December 31st, 2023, so it's a couple of weeks away if we want to move forward with that extension. As everyone knows, there's not a lot of options in this area for solid waste hauling, so Bourne is one of them. There are 2 other options, but the recommendation would be to move forward with Bourne. We have a pretty good rate at this time under the extension. The extension would follow that rate structure. The one limitation is the town of Bourne and the facility. It's based on that they have the airspace to be able to handle the additional solid waste. I believe they do. At this time, we did not reach out to the town of Bourne, but under that agreement, it clearly states that a 5-year extension is available for the town.
Questions from the board of Mr. McConerty? Mr. Muscally?
The other two options?
One option is to work with our hauling company that we have right now to haul the material off Cape. Waste Connections does our hauling now through Nauset Disposal, is to be able to, the option of looking to haul it off Cape, that would be hauling it over the bridge and hauling the material to Rochester. It'd be expensive, it'd be a lot of over-the-road hauling. So, you know, the Bourne, at least the material stay on Cape. And the second option is the possibility to look to see if, to have the material transported off Cape by rail. So, through the Upper Cape Regional Transfer Facility.
Okay.
Mr. McConnell, if we stay in with Bourne, we have a locked-in rate as well for this contract?
Under the contract, it is, but in the agreement, it does state that if the rates if the rates change for the town of Bourne, they're not going to absorb the extra costs. So, like I said, we didn't reach out to them yet. I was waiting to have this heard at the select board meeting before we reach out to them, and they would like to have they need to have a letter in writing by the end of the year.
Which would be the same boat we'd be in if we went with the other two options as well. If rates go up, they go up, right?
Correct. So at this time, we have a pretty good rate with Bourne. We're expecting to be paying about $74.25, $74.30 a ton under the current contract with Bourne. And my understanding is other facilities off Cape are in the 100 range, 105 range.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Brown, did I see that you had a question?
He asked the same question.
Okay. Any other questions of Mr. McConerty?
Nope.
Okay, I would entertain a motion. The motion is written. You have options in the packet. Okay, I've got it right here.
Okay.
I would make a motion to approve the one-time 5-year extension with the Town of Bourne Integrated Solid Waste Management Facility for receiving the Town of Falmouth municipal solid waste.
I'll second it, Madam Chair.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. McConerty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I couldn't find it.
That's okay. Okay, we're going to move into the operating budget presentation with Mr. Renshaw.
Good evening. This is exciting. I've been thrilled to have had the opportunity to work with the staff over the past few months. Madam Chair and Select Board, I want to thank you for the opportunity to present this FY25 budget to you this evening. Before digging into the details and going through some of the various elements, I want to really acknowledge that this budget represents truly a collaborative, collective effort. It starts with Select Board's policy, giving us guidance in terms of what you want to see and the importance, priorities. And also involves, obviously, the department heads who prepare these requests, spend a lot of time, many hours, identifying the departmental needs. The process started back with a memo that I sent out towards the end of September, requesting that the departments submit their budgets by the deadline of October 23rd, just trying to give you some timeline and context. The memo stipulated that additional staffing and amounts above and beyond level funding would require a memorandum to me and the Assistant Town Manager for further review. Following the submission of the budgets, the department budgets towards the end of October, we set aside some time to meet with selective department heads to talk about some of the specific requests, trying to obtain more detail in regards to those requests. We completed those departmental meetings on December 7th. Want to kind of go over these are the 4 elements of the presentation, just go through these real quickly. We'll be talking a little bit about some of the guiding principles, which I've already kind of touched on, revenue estimates, challenges, and strategic plan priorities of the Select Board. And lastly, I'll conclude with next steps. We used the following 4 bullets as kind of the pillars. They're really the foundation upon which we built this FY25 budget upon. Listing those are ensuring long-term fiscal stability, advancing Select Board strategic priorities as identified in the strategic plan of 23-27 through 27, maintaining basic services and infrastructure, and exploring cost-effective ways to streamline operations, and become more cost-efficient whenever possible. And lastly, and not leastly, no Proposition 2.5 operating overrides. As you likely already know, through reading the papers, national and regionally, our revenue growth continues to be strong here in the town of Falmouth. However, we have seen some unusual inflationary cost pressures for this upcoming fiscal year. The proposed FY25 budget is balanced and based on very conservative revenue estimates. I want to go back and talk a little bit about some of the unusual cost pressures that we've seen. We'll talk a little bit more about this in detail in some subsequent slides, but I want to give you an example, a contractual increase that we saw this upcoming year. In solid waste, we just had the solid waste discussion, so it was a good segue. Our solid waste contractual disposal waste fees went up about $436,000 from this current fiscal year to the next, which represents about a 4.8% increase, overall increase. A couple of inflationary pressures, I'll call them. In terms of utilities, our electric utility rate increased by about $187,000. The Cape Cod Compact, I believe, that consortium of partners, we saw about a $187,000 increase, which is about 2.5% of the overall budgetary increase that we're projecting this upcoming year, I should say. And lastly, and I was a little bit shocked by this, I don't know why, but in terms of supply costs, our water and wastewater chemical costs are projected to go up by about $150,000 this upcoming year. I'm going to say a little bit more about revenue and cost pressures a little bit later in the presentation. This slide gives you kind of a 30,000-foot view of our revenue growth, our outlook in property taxes and new growth specifically. As I mentioned previously, our revenue outlook continues to be strong. The new growth in property taxes, we set an all-time high. In the past year, it was $1.6 million. This year, based upon certifications that Trish just received, the assessor's office worked diligently to receive from the Department of Revenue, we're at $2.5 million in new growth as of the closeout of FY24. This is really an extraordinary amount, and again, a new watermark, a new record high in terms of new growth. Really reflects the volume of new construction and renovations that took place over the past year, ending this June 30th. And we want to acknowledge the building departments clearly for their work. I mean, they obviously had a huge hand in this, processing what amounted to a really extraordinary volume of permits, and also the assessor's office. She was put through a lot of requirements to provide documentation from the Department of Revenue to certify that $2.5 million in new growth, and they did a fantastic job in doing so. And I just want to give a little bit of kind of a context again, in starting from FY20 and kind of give you the past 5-year glimpse. In FY20 and 22, we estimated $700,000 in new growth. In FYs 23 and 24, $800,000 estimate in new growth. Again, we try to maintain a conservative outlook in terms of forecasting. And in FY25, this current proposed budget, we're using, again, a conservative estimate of $900,000. We'll segue into revenue outlook, state revenues, and available funds. As you know, our state aid net of charges represents really a small portion of the town budget of about $1 million. It's a more significant impact to the school department, about $7 million net of charges. Available funding, $1.4 million increase has been allocated to the operating budget from available funds. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. We really made this year a concerted effort to identify alternative funds, funding sources, really focused on, through Ed's office, our finance director's office and his staff, really kind of scrutinizing and looking hard for underutilized available fund accounts that hadn't been used in the past. And as you can imagine, this has been a very good year to draw down, utilize some of those funds because of the unusual challenges that we've had, some of those cost inflationary pressures that I discussed earlier. Again, challenging year is kind of the theme. You can see that in terms of our expenditures. As you all can imagine, wages certainly reflect, and Falmouth is not unique. When you look at most municipal governments across the Commonwealth, wages represent the largest portion of the town's budget. The current FY25 proposed budget includes wage settlements for 5 of the unions, representing about 50% of all of the town's employees. I think we've been aggressive, but prudent in allocating $400,000 to a separate warrant article for union and non-union wages that are yet to be determined. And the compensation increases, as you look around the Commonwealth, look around the Cape, you see compensation increases exceeding that traditional 2% cost of living adjustment. Really reflects the need we feel as a management team to really offer more competitive wages to enhance that recruitment and retention effort. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit more in more detail about some of those expenditures and some of the pressures that we're feeling and some of the kind of guiding principles with this FY25 proposed budget. Again, the 14 firefighters that were not covered by the override that was passed at town meeting, we're proposing to fund $500,000 of that additional cost. Just the health insurance premiums and pension combined increased our FY25 budget by over $2.2 million. I already mentioned the solid waste contractual increases with regards to inflationary pressures. Property and casualty insurance, electricity, and the chemicals, what I mentioned previously. All those combined represent about $1 million of the $8.9, roughly $1 million increase from this current FY24 budget to the FY25. So that gives you a little bit of context in terms of the increase. School department is not immune. Thank you very much. Immune from these cost pressures related to high needs, in particular related to the high needs population, increased costs for special education. And Madam Chair and Select Board, I'm happy to report that we spent a lot of time talking to Superintendent Dewar and her staff. They did a really fantastic job this year in terms of working with us. Very good dialogue with the superintendent and Mr. Dart, the Assistant Director of Finance and Operations, over several meetings. We were able to fund, as it currently stands at this stage of the operating budget, all $2.596 million of the school department's request. The school department has agreed to offset about $550,000 of that increase, again, by really drilling down and looking at those underutilized alternative non-general fund accounts, funds that have been sitting there underutilized for the past several years. Housing, we just had that discussion. Again, the $950,000 for the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund from the Rooms Excise Tax Housing is included in this FY25 proposed budget. Really wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about what I think, again, focuses upon the Select Board's strategic priorities in terms of staffing and looking very tactically at these strategic priorities. Town meeting in November, as you all recall, approved 4 of those new positions for funding. We also included in this FY25 proposed budget, in addition to those 4 town meeting approved positions, 2 new police department positions, the deputy chief and an additional patrol officer. And as you can see, that obviously addresses the health and public safety strategic priority. The wastewater senior project manager, one of the 4 town meeting approved, clearly falls within the water, wastewater, and solid waste management strategic priority. Coastal Resilience Coordinator, that position is currently funded in this FY25 proposed budget, addressing the coastal natural resources and infrastructure strategic priority. And lastly, the Assistant HR Director, again approved by town meeting last month, addresses the organizational effectiveness strategic priority. And we also have included in this proposed budget a fire overtime increase of $250,000, $250,000, and we feel that this addresses the health and public safety concerns outlined by the Select Board. I want to talk next about some of the funding reserves. We talked at town meeting about allocating some additional funds towards capital stabilization. Drawing your attention to the right-hand side of this slide, our current fiscal policy calls out 2 to 5% of our operational budget, which is about $3.7 to $9.1 million. That's kind of the range of funding that would be in that capital stabilization. We're proposing in this FY25 budget to increase that by adding $5.5 million additional dollars to the capital stabilization. That's going to require us to come back to the select board at a future date to kind of amend that fiscal policy, to get us within, kind of bump that range up, so to speak, a little bit. But I think that's going to be very important going forward, that we allocate those additional funds into capital stabilization. Debt stabilization, as you all know, this is the amount allocated to represent the decrease in debt from FY23 to 25. The allocations basically serve two purposes. The first is to reserve space within that levy limit to pay for future debt. And secondly, and not least importantly, funds in the debt stabilization can be used to reduce future tax impact on planned project borrowing. We are recommending or proposing no contribution to the general stabilization fund this year because the balance is at the top end of its current goal, again, as outlined by the fiscal policy. And there's no specific policy goals for the others. And I wanted to mention also with regard to the OPEB or other post-employment benefits, this proposed FY25 budget is allocating about $500,000 for that OPEB liability. In terms of an overview, as I've said a couple of times already, the revenue growth forecast is very strong. We don't anticipate major changes. We have experienced, like other municipalities, organizations in the Commonwealth and across the region, some unusual cost pressures this year. This proposed FY25 budget certainly avoids cuts to existing service levels, and I think we've really looked tactically at trying to address, again, increasing our efficiencies and effectiveness where we can. But certainly our aim was to not cut existing service levels. It's a balanced budget based on conservative revenue estimates, again, one of the priorities of the Select Board. Importantly, it does not require an override, and the tax increase is limited to the 2.5% levy limit and the $2.5 million in new growth that I outlined previously. The budget includes investments to address those critical challenges and, again, focuses on the Select Board strategic priorities. And importantly, and this I wanted to say this, this proposed FY25 budget does not include a lot of really legitimate bona fide requests by the departments. As you all know, budgeting is about making difficult choices and priorities. So I wanted the Select Board to know that there were several requests that we were not able to fund in this proposed budget. And to conclude, obviously we're very fortunate to be in the position that we are, to maintain those services and move the town, the community, the organization forward. And again, this has much to do with the Select Board and its prudent policy guidance. We are basically in a strong position, again, based upon those longstanding practices. And I really want to call this out. I think the department heads at the department level do a fantastic job. And in the 6 months that I've been here, I've seen it. And I think you've seen it over the years. The staff do a very good job of making sure that they're being prudent and very fiscally sound in how they expend their money. And they're always looking for cost efficiency and effectiveness in the decisions that they make. We're looking forward to the Select Board's feedback and detailed finance and a more detailed Finance Committee review to follow. As you all know, the Select Board, this is just the initial presentation. Ideally, I would ask that the Select Board votes at its next meeting, January 8th, to transmit the budget to the Finance Committee. The sooner they can get going on their review, the better. And lastly, I want to say this. While this FY25 proposed budget, as it stands today, is a pretty significant increase from the FY24, this current fiscal year's budget, at about 5.5% increase, which is significant. The proposed increases are offset by increased revenue projections, which I've gone through with you briefly. I believe that this spending plan addresses multiple strategic priorities, strategic objectives of Select Board, and is very representative of the true costs of operating a large, complex 21st century municipality. So again, I thank you for the opportunity to present the budget to you. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. But again, my request would be that the Select Board, you all have your budget binders have been delivered to you. So my request would be that the Board consider at its next meeting moving this forward to the Finance Committee for more detailed review.
Questions or comments from the board? Mr. Brown?
I can't help but ask, I'm curious of what are the department requests that we're not able to fund this year? Are there any that really stand out that you?
You know, nothing that stands out clearly in my mind. If the next time we meet, I can provide some kind of a summary of what those were. Staffing, probably some additional staffing requests that we felt, the management team felt after reviewing, there just was not room. And again, we were really trying to look very, very tactically at what exactly we're trying to accomplish with this budget and with the revenues that we had available.
But not really like systems or equipment that's being denied, it's.
I don't honestly recall major systems. Peter, do you recall any kind of major systems, maybe?
No, I think that's correct. There isn't, we didn't have requests from departments that said, we need extra money because we have this contractual service that is required. We have no choice about the cost is increasing, and we said, no, find another way. Certainly there were instances where the town manager mentioned we've placed more of an emphasis on making sure we're taking advantage of other revenue sources. So there were some instances where there were cost increases for a department, but they were able to tap some other funding sources so we could address them without hitting the budget. But in line with the comment that we are able to maintain essential services, I don't think there are any cuts along the nature of what you're referring to.
That's great.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Zelinski.
Mr. Renshaw, with the new software, do you anticipate with the new software that was voted on at town meeting and approved, that will close up some of those loops that may help us with those deficiencies that they don't know, that this will help with those deficiencies that we may not have been able to fund?
So the short answer is yes. I mean, there are a couple of different platforms. The integrated financial management system, I think, is the one you're referring
Right,
to.
that's-
Yes, I think that's one of the things that we're hopeful that there's going to be an opportunity to.
So we're hopefully optimistic that that'll close some loops that, for needs, added needs, maybe?
It's
And
possible.
staff, I guess, is what I'm saying, added staff. Will that help clean that up a little bit?
I think it's possible.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to have Mr. Centeo comment on that?
Yeah, Ed, did you want to make a comment about the opportunity for us to close loops?
Or how the financial management system is going to impact staffing requirements and what staff is able to accomplish.
Thanks, Peter, because that came out a lot easier out of your mouth than mine.
I think the pressure on the clerical staff will be minimized,
Yeah,
or
good.
reduced through a more efficient technology platform. And there's some innovations that we hope to put in place that can do even more than what other communities can do. It's proven technology in the private sector, and it's now coming to some of the municipal software types. It's not going to help, prune the trees or cut the grass or, do the patrols or some of those types of things where there are still requirements and stressors, but I think we can definitely help on the clerical side.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter.
And my comment is, I understand that you have to make really hard decisions and choices, and you look at the strategic priorities, and you look at public safety, and we're really highlighting public safety right now, and I think that's important. I also do hope, to Mr. Centeo's comment, because it wasn't allowed this year, you'll look at it again next year.
Yes.
I'm thinking in particular the Department of the DPW. So it may not have happened this year, but we'll continue to look at that.
Yes, we will. And two quick points I wanted to make. It's funny when you get a different perspective when you stand away from the podium, and I was listening to Ed's comments. One of the things, and I think Select Board Member Zelinski, Vice Chairman, that you were asking about is kind of the efficiency and the loopholes. One of the things that I think what Ed put into place this year is the department heads were asked to prepare their requests. We actually utilized our existing software, but in maybe a different way. This new financial management platform, this town meeting approved, is 21st century. Our current platform is not, but it did have the ability to allow staff to enter into a system, right, versus an Excel spreadsheet. So I think in terms of Ed's comments about, alleviating stress involved in perhaps eliminating error, because we're all human and we make mistakes in Excel spreadsheets, by Ed opening up and flipping the switch and turning that functionality on with our current budgeting software, It's going to kind of replicate and make the transition to the new system that much easier. And the other point I wanted to make real quickly, and Ed reminded me of this as well, and I think it's important. You know, over the course of years, we've had some expenses budgeted for on the capital side that are truly recurring, more maintenance, operational costs. This came up in conversations with the Finance Committee in town meeting. I think there were some discussions about it. So we made a concerted effort this year in this FY25 proposed. I think there's about $230,000 roughly. And those costs that are typically, or have been, I should say, historically classified as capital, we're moving those over to the operations budget, because that gives the true sense and true indication of the cost of operating a municipal government when you have those costs that had been kind of buried in capital but are truly recurring maintenance costs shifted over to operations.
Good.
I also like the idea that you're sort of scrubbing accounts to see if you can have other sources of revenue, so I appreciate that. Anything else from the board? Thank you, Mr. Renshaw.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move into a report from the Energy Committee. I have you slated for 15 minutes.
I will hustle my bustle right through here as fast as I can. Good evening, Madam Chair and esteemed members of the committee and town manager and assistant town manager. Nice to see you all. I'm Megan Amsler, and I am the chair of the Falmouth Energy Committee, and I'm here to give you an update. And I honestly can't remember if we were here last year or not, but I know one of our members did give an update at town meeting. So we have some new members. Just to highlight, we lost Rosemary Carey to the West Coast, but we got David Leslie in just a few weeks ago. I think he was appointed by you guys. So we have a great group of folks. Just an overview quickly of what we are committed to in terms of supporting energy efficiency and the growth of renewable energy to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and our reliance on fossil fuel, and also in that, meeting the state's climate goals and laws. And so we're really about promoting energy resilience for the entire community, but obviously with a focus on the municipal areas. Just an overview in terms of like where our collective heads are at on our committee. We're thinking about energy resilience, and was excited to see that there's a coastal resilience position coordinator that's on the list, and see that there's a lot of intersectionality in there in terms of how we are prepared to be resilient as a community when it comes to our critical electric and power needs. And thinking about our energy infrastructure and how we build resiliency, and from the critical structure of the municipality on out to community resilience, and then sort of thinking about our overall governance and what does that look like. We have lots of ideas. We would love to hear from you folks in terms of what are top priorities, and Peter, when he was here a second ago, I've talked with him before, and just looking to different folks to engage. And now that we have Stephanie Madsen here as our sustainability coordinator, super excited to have her involved in those conversations as well. One thing that I have a couple slides on this is we have actually been asked by members of the community to support the adoption of the PACE program, which is Property Assessed Clean Energy. And hopefully you all had a chance to read over. I sent along, there's a draft resolution that is typically made by the select board to adopt this. It doesn't need to go to town meeting apparently, but it allows property assessment for investment in clean energy, both energy efficiency and renewables. And I understand from someone from the mass development crew that they're the umbrella under which PACE sits. They just have been working to close some deals with Greenfield, Mass, and with Boston. And I know when we had a presentation a couple of years ago from Mass Development about PACE, some of the concerns that came up were around our software. And I understand that Munis is the software that we are moving toward. And so I asked some questions of Mass Development about who's been using that, and both Greenfield and Boston use that software and do so seamlessly. And they have also hired a consultant, Mass Development has hired a consultant to assist municipalities that do adopt the PACE legislation to get up to speed. So it would reduce the amount of person hours in that, how do we get up, how do we do this kind of thing, which that had come up when we met a number of years before with these folks. So there are 72 communities in the Commonwealth that have adopted PACE, a couple of them on the Cape. If we adopt it, it doesn't necessarily mean that it gets utilized, but we do know that from an affordable housing perspective, that's where we have heard the desire for this to be made available. And so it basically, it acts as a tool to help finance the gaps in big energy efficiency, whether it's a building retrofit or something along those lines, that maybe grants and some other things would leave a gap, and this enables you to finance that with a betterment, basically. So that's that. Any questions? Because you guys can stop me as I'm trotting along here. Rats. So this somehow got cut off. One thing we have been talking about as a committee is thinking about, sort of a couple slides ago, the energy resiliency piece, making sure that we're thinking about energy being equitable, so it's accessible by everyone, and thinking about microgrids and thinking sort of out of the box in terms of how, when we purchase electric vehicle chargers and are thinking about battery systems and thinking about how do we support the grid with some of this technology. Those are definitely some of the ways that we have been thinking about how can we move forward and put ideas forward to you as our decision makers around these things. Electrifying our school buses, this is also part of that toolbox. If we think about electric school buses as being big batteries on wheels, and the fact that they can plug in to, say, support the high school as our shelter with electricity and for critical needs and things like that. It's a different way of thinking about how energy resiliency can be met, while of course thinking about indoor air quality on the buses and external air quality outside of the buses by electrification. We have also been advocating for the electrification of our vehicle and vessel transportation. So we put on, co-sponsored an event which was the Ferries Now, which was held in March, and it was about how do we help the steamship think about this, and had some additional speakers from Europe talking about how they have electrified their vessel fleet, thinking about the coastal ecosystems, again, sort of the resiliency and the sustainability, like making sure that our shorelines are helped, or the impacts are reduced when we make a transition, and also back to, as I just mentioned with the school buses, these things have very large batteries on them, so they too can be part of a microgrid strategy. We have some time to think about this, and we have sent some communication to the Steamship Authority, and we have, I think, copied you all on our communication to that and encouraged you to apply a little pressure on that as well. And I urge, and I'm happy to share this actually, but in terms of looking at sort of what the Vineyard has done for their climate action plan and how they have really been mindful of the electrification component as well, realizing that we are sort of connected via currently a pretty polluting fleet, but the value of looking at electrification. We have been big advocates for affordable housing and solar, and trying to help raise awareness around the Cape Light Compact's program for deed-restricted homes for electrification, adding solar and heat pumps. And anytime that there are grant programs that come up and opportunities, we are engaged and helping, you know, sort of toot that horn throughout the community. And let's see, this is just really focused on, now that we have Stephanie here, this has sort of been something that our committee has been focused on, and it's really great to have somebody now who can really dig in. We had done the feasibility analysis for all of the municipal properties a number of years ago, and then now sort of digging in and how do we prioritize that list even further, and how do we look at some of the school buildings, I think in particular, where there are opportunities. But obviously, just, you know, this is a slide just kind of overviewing where we do have solar right now, and looking at what can we do in the future given the various programs that are out there, the various other organizations that help facilitate solar for municipal projects, and all that sort of thing. And then we have obviously the 6 megawatts of solar out at the landfill. I believe there's additional land out there that the town owns that could potentially be further developed for solar. And so thinking about that, I know we as the municipality get financial revenue from Eversource through these projects, as well as the off-takers for this project serve low-income households through the Joe for Son program. And Stephanie put together this rubric for selection of the solar projects, and so I know that's something that at a later date she will be presenting on, but this is something that the Energy Committee cares dearly about. And thinking about carports in conjunction with some of the roof-mounted opportunities. So, but, we did a lot of public outreach last year. We wrote a bunch of articles pretty regularly for the Falmouth Enterprise, talking about energy storage, electric ferries, a whole host of heat pumps, and just trying to help disseminate factual information on energy-related things. And I bet this is not going to. And just as someone who cares a great deal about rats, does this not allow us to play a it's a video about why we need to talk to our kids about being electricians and how we need more people in the trades. If we're going to meet our goals of decarbonization and electrification, making sure that kids that are maybe not super excited about going to college think about going into the trades, because we need these folks in order to keep our infrastructure up and running. And yeah, so unfortunately it looks like it doesn't want to work. Any questions?
Questions from the board? Mr. Brown?
When can we expect some of the solar panel projects to start happening? What do we have to do?
That's a Stephanie question, I would think. In terms, I mean, I know we're in the sort of information gathering phase right now, and that will be forthcoming.
If there's anything we need to do to help, I'd like to do it.
Yeah.
Because we've seen it a couple of times.
Yeah.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
if I could.
go ahead.
Great question, Select Board Member Brown. So we're going to invite Stephanie at a future meeting to kind of give an update on some of the, she's been doing great work in the short time that she's been with us. We're very thankful to have her, so we'll have her come to Select Board meeting at a future meeting,
Great.
give an update.
Thank you.
Kind of answer that question of what can we do next?
And the plan moving forward. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just like to echo what you said. The trade school is really, I mean, they do a great job educating the kids, but I don't know if you remember, they came to us and gave a report a couple of years ago, and he said, I'm happy to report that a certain number of percentage of our kids go on to higher education. And I said, I don't know if that's such a great thing. I said, you know, we really need the kids in the trade, and the gentleman was very surprised at my comment, but it's really actually, I was serious, because I think we need to figure out, or help the kids figure out, if they really want to go to trade school, let's make the most of that and work in the trades, rather than change your mind later and go to college and, you know, waste a spot in a trade school. So I don't know how we can do that, but note to parents, I guess.
Just, go
ahead.
The PACE program looks very interesting, and I wonder what we need to do in order to get it on the agenda in the future, or at least.
I actually did pull this, and I will bring that up at my meeting with the town manager, and we will consider putting it on an agenda. It won't be now.
That was my
And
last
to that-
question, was what's the catch? What do we have to be responsible for, monitoring, or?
I believe, yes, in terms of the software, right, because it would be a betterment on the properties that decide to utilize that tool, financing tool. But, you know, I think what would be helpful is if we had somebody from the PACE program from Mass Development come and speak to you to perhaps answer those questions directly, because I feel like I'm playing
Yeah,
telephone operator.
it is more involved, though, and so I'm not prepared to do anything
Yeah,
tonight.
I just
but-
wanted to share with you the.
Absolutely.
You know, the draft.
Absolutely.
Adoption.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks so much.
Did you want to say something?
I could help out with.
Go, absolutely.
Right, yes,
Please. You've got 6 seconds.
Okay. The town would actually have to put the charge on the bill, on the tax bill, collect the money, and then remit that money to PACE. So that's where the software comes into play.
And I read something about, I didn't want to get into it, but there is, it's more complicated than
I
you
just
think.
wanted to look into it,
Yeah,
that's all.
absolutely. I think we should look into it.
There's always something.
Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
if you
Very
need any
informative.
of that connection, please reach out to me. I'm happy to facilitate, or, you know, make those introductions to the folks from Mass Development PACE program, because they've been really helpful in terms of answering the questions that came up in our last meeting. So,
Awesome. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Okay, we're going to move on to the report from the Board of Health.
Good evening, Select Board and Town Leadership. Diana Malloy. For those of you that I haven't met, I am a nurse by trade and been Chair of the Board of Health for the last few years. I have worked in our community in healthcare for 30-plus years and continue to do so. My current role is at Barnstable County Sheriff's Office, managing the health services. So just to give you a little background, just wanted to start with our team of members. George Huffelder has been on the board many, many years and is a great resource, as Kevin and John Waterbury. Amy Roth is our newest member, and of the membership, 5 members on the board, we have a lot of scientists. So I'll tell you why in a minute, why I've kind of mentioned that. But the staff, Scott has been leading the charge with the whole crew down there. Mallory's on military leave right now, and so Scott's working with the rest of the group. But I think we feel at this point we're staffed appropriately to meet the needs. And I have to say, when we were talking a little bit about organization and being able to utilize the electronics, Scott has done a great job of getting the department user-friendly. So we've made some changes this past year in how he brings information in, so it's been great. We start our every meeting with reading the mission statement, so I'm going to do that again tonight, because the mission of the Falmouth Board of Health is to protect and promote the health, safety, and well-being of residents and visitors of the town of Falmouth. The primary functions of the board to achieve this mission are to prevent and control disease, enforce state and local regulations, promulgate local health regulations, identify and protect from environmental hazards, and advocate for a healthy community. That's where we're at. Just want to thank members of the board. Amy Roth again joined us to make the board of 5 this year. I'm resigning as of December 31st after 8.5 years on the board and several years as the chair. The board has utilized each other's expertise, experience, and skills throughout the year in their collaborative efforts to address some of the challenges that have been presented to us. And my recommendation, if I could, just to replace my position with a medical or public health professional, kind of to just round out the team, is just my thoughts there. Scott can speak to some of this if we need to more specifically, but looking at the number of times the topic's been on the agenda, and Title V, septic, quite a bit, and looking at the Title V regulations, updating Falmouth regulations in accordance with the state's Title V changes. Housing and nuisance, stable regulation hearings and vote, tobacco sales violations were addressed, wells, irrigation wells, Smart Citizens Task Force came before us, and the solid waste recycling regulation and vote. We started off our year with that voting for those regulations that had been a lot of work the previous year. And the state environmental code, some of the changes that are coming up, and again, Scott can answer more specific questions, but a lot of what we're looking at is the watershed permits and how we're going to address all that going forward. So it's going to be a heavy lift for the town and residents, and just a lot more to come. The board has been working collaboratively with Water Quality Committee. As a matter of fact, John Waterbury on our committee is on water quality, and so we're trying to make sure that we're addressing all aspects of our water and our waste. All the work that the Solid Waste Advisory, Alan Robinson and Amy Roth had done an incredible job of collaborating with the board, and again, the vote came to us by the board on 12/19/2022. So we just started off 23 with that passed. 2024, we'll evaluate the implementation of the solid waste regulations and processes to ensure they're meeting the goals. Couple of highlighting areas. The auto camp was challenged by some ongoing issues with functioning of their system, and basically having all their wastewater transported off in order to maintain their business there. That was a requirement that we had made until the system was up and running, and I believe at this point too, Scott, that they are managing some of it to test out. No, we're still at negative. They're still pumping all of it. Okay, thank you. And the Tides Motel, a very sensitive area, 3 sides with water, so we worked closely with them to get a new system in there up and functioning. And again, at one point, had to have a tight tank in place so that all of their waste was being transported off before the system was up and running. So those two were big. Auto camp, as it still continues. It's been a challenge for them. And just, we deal with a lot of housing and nuisance complaints. I mean, things, we have to look at harborage and how does this affect public health. We can't just look at the fact that some of these yards are not pleasing. So we sometimes have to really take a hard look and be able to discern the difference and work with folks to get rid of what needs to be moved off of their property so that there's no harborage. A lot of work on the stable regulations. As you may have seen, we made the papers quite often with that over the last few years. And in April 2023, the town meeting repealed the current bylaw and granted us the authority to develop, implement, and enforce a more robust set of regulations. And so those were approved by the board August 28th, 2023, after many community hearings and a lot of input. So I think everyone felt really good about what had transpired, and that the regulations developed give us what we need in order to protect the animals. And just to note, anything related to that, the animal directly would come through the MSPCA, and many times we've made reports up to them and worked collaboratively with them. But the stables themselves and what the requirements are is what came under our jurisdiction. The single-use plastic article, Board Member Amy Roth and Health Agent Scott are working with the Plastic Reduction Committee charged with recommending elements to a regulation. And it's been a little bit challenging, and there's a lot to it. There's a lot of detail and a lot of impact. So they're taking it one step at a time and very seriously. And once they complete their recommendations for the regulation, they'll submit it to the Board of Health and go through the same process of community hearing, et cetera. The new state septic regulations recently developed, so then once that got put into place, we were able to then take our Falmouth septic regulations. After many public forums and reiterations and input, the regulation was adopted at the end of November, which is effective 2/1/24. And the key updates really included increasing the groundwater separation to account for the sea level rise and phasing out cesspools with any failure or sale of property, because there's still quite a few out there. Ensuring the engineers present information on the performance of innovative alternative systems when working with their clients. There's data, especially at a Barnstable County level, that shows the performance of many of these different innovative systems. And though we cannot require or do not require any specific one or back any specific company, we are looking at the performance and asking the engineers to make sure they've reviewed that with their clients and do a sign-off as part of the application process, that they are aware of the different systems and the performance and what they're choosing. The Narcan boxes at town-owned properties, we voted to support the installation of them. We've met several times with this Citizens Task Force regarding concerns over noise being truck traffic coming up from Woods Hole. We had an annual update from the Visiting Nurse Association with regard to their public health nursing and communicable disease surveillance contract with Falmouth, and the AIDS support group of Cape Cod provided an update to us. What you don't see on here is COVID for the first time in 3.5 years, but I just want to share that certainly it is still part of our life and is going to be for a very long time to come, just like the flu. But on May 11th, 2023, the public health emergency was lifted in the state of Massachusetts, so we've moved on, and it's just going to be part of our life. You know, the flu vaccine that we get today actually has remnants of the 1918 Spanish flu. So, these viruses mutate and go on for years to come, so we just have to be vigilant. And just want to especially recognize Stephanie Mealy, who's been at every one of our meetings. She represents the Women's League of Voters, and she's been a loyal attendee and a big support to the board. So just want to publicly thank her for that. And as a board, we'd like to thank the Select Board for your ongoing support of our work. I always feel that everyone's really supportive and helpful in what we need to do. And acknowledge Scott and his team. They've done an amazing job since he moved into that position. I was here when there was a previous health agent, and I have to say I think that Scott's moved the department light years ahead in trying to make sure that we're customer service compliant, if you will, or very savvy to that, and working with people. When people come to us for their request of a special innovative system or whatever, it's very obvious that Scott and his team has been already working with them. Even the housing things, by the time they get to us, he's been working with them for quite a while. So I myself would like to thank the Select Board for all the opportunity that I've had with the Board of Health. Though it's been challenging at times, and 3.5 years of COVID definitely made it a highlight. It was truly an honor to serve in protecting the health and residents of the visitors to the town of Falmouth. And just know that you have a very dedicated, knowledgeable team on the board, and it really was an honor to serve with them, and I think we worked very well together. So, any questions?
Any questions from the board? Mr. Brown?
I have one. I know that the DEP only requires the innovative alternative septics to perform at 19 milligrams per liter. Could the town of Falmouth regulate it to 10 if we wanted to? Is that something that we could consider?
Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Scott McGann, your health agent. It already is.
Oh.
So the planning board uses 12.
Okay.
DEP's lowered it. So 19 is sort of the older standard with the older technology.
All right.
You're going to see you're going to see probably 11 or 12 is
Okay.
probably going to the numbers. But 12 is what we have on ours. Our local reg and planning board, I believe, could be, I'm trying to remember, but also 12. So 12 is what we'd be looking for standard.
Oh, that's good to know. Thank you.
And 19, if you're putting them in at 19 versus 12, you have to put more of them in if they're running at 19 than you'd have to put in if they were running at 12. It's just, there's not a lot of technologies that can do 12, and the ones that recently have done 12 aren't generally use approved yet at DEP. So the older technologies that run 50%, 60% nitrogen removal are general use approved, and the one that runs better just because it hasn't been around long enough.
It's still provisional.
Still provisional. You got it.
Any other questions from the board?
I have one more.
Go ahead.
Have you heard of this new drug called Kratom? It's not really a drug, it's just an off-the-shelf thing that kids are apparently abusing.
I have not, no.
Another new one, yeah, it's getting ahead of the regulations with that one. I had a friend who works at the hospital report that some kids are coming in now having health issues, and she pointed me to an article of a young lady who passed away, and her mom was interviewed by the news. There's a news article on it. Just a heads up, it's a new thing for parents to worry about.
It's in the, and there's the horse tranquilizer, it escapes me at the moment.
Ketamine. Ketamine.
That, they're finding in different things. So it's pretty scary because they don't even know what they're getting when using some of these substances. And just wanted to add on to Scott's comment about the milligrams per milliliter. In our Falmouth septic regs, our local regs, we have added like compliance. If you're not in compliance, if your numbers aren't coming, what are the steps you need to take in order to try to bring it within compliance to the required? And many of those were written into deeds at 19. So, but even those sometimes were, you find that they're not performing as they should. So there is now a process in there that people should follow or will follow to enforce those numbers.
Good, thank you.
Thank you very much, but I also would like to thank you, Diana, for your work on the board for 8 years. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
It was
your
an honor.
expertise. Amazing. Thank you. Okay, we will move on to the Veterans Council Committee.
Nobody's here.
Do we have anyone here
I
for
don't
that?
think that,
I got someone scheduled, but something must have come up, so we'll have
Okay,
to postpone.
we'll move on. Mr. Kasparian. Where did he go?
Uh-oh.
Don't run away, Mr. Kasparian. You're on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm happy to help.
You tried to run away.
Hello, Michael Kasparian, President of the Falmouth Chamber. Thank you for the invitation to come and talk about the Chamber, and I'm delighted to be here. So I know I have 10 minutes. I was thinking a little bit about what I wanted to present to you and talk a little bit about some of the highlights of this year, but for those people who may not really understand chambers of commerce, I mean, there's a couple of different kind of models. So a traditional chamber of commerce is really an association made up of members. And most chambers of commerce around the country and in the Commonwealth are made up of businesses. And they're really, when people think about chambers, they think about a business-focused organization. So what sets the Falmouth Chamber apart is we really are a community-focused organization. And when people say to me, why should I be a member of the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce, the response is, if you care about Falmouth, that's why you should be a member of the Chamber. And I'll take some time and explain to you why that is so. Unlike a lot of chambers, we don't just have business members. We have nonprofits. I think virtually every nonprofit in town is a member of the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce. We work very closely, as you know, with town government, police, fire and rescue, our Falmouth Public Schools, the Sheriff's Department, and other organizations to disseminate information, get information out there. In fact, Scott and I were just talking about how, we support the Health Department in actually getting their information out and getting those things out there. The best way of really looking at it, I think, is if you take a look at the composition of our board of directors, that in and of itself will speak to really the Chamber's mission and what we do. So in addition to the 3 local banks, other businesses that are on the board or have been on the board, we also have several nonprofits, local artists, Captain Lowen from the Falmouth Police Department. Falmouth Police are represented on our board of directors. Falmouth Public Schools are represented on our board of directors. The scientific community is represented on our board of directors through Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and Cape Cod Healthcare representing the health community. Why is this helpful and how does that work? Because we get to collaborate at the board level and work with these organizations, not only for the benefit of businesses, but for the benefit of the entire community. And we reciprocate. When we look at the schools, so I serve, you were talking earlier about vocational. So as you probably know, there's a career vocational technical educational program at the high school. So in addition to prepping students to go on to college, there is a vocational track. I serve on that committee. We also bring students in and find them internship opportunities, not only with businesses, but with nonprofits and other groups, also in the vocational. We work that way. We also participate through my involvement in the Equity and Inclusion Program through Falmouth Public Schools, because that's important. That's a piece that's missing also in the business community. We've heard from people who might come from different backgrounds, how they may have been treated differently here when they've been at businesses, and we contact those businesses and try to educate. Education is the key. Through the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, Marine Biological Laboratory, we work very tirelessly on ocean rise, on climate issues, which we know are really impactful to not only businesses but to the entire community. Cape Cod Healthcare, working with them on issues and trying to, what's it take to get more health services here. We help get their information out to people as well, which is really helpful. And it's really trying to put the whole community together and trying to get all this information out to everybody. Some of the things I think that we do well, which traditional chambers do, and I can throw statistics at you. I mean, believe it or not, we have over 1.5 million people go to our website every year, which is a pretty huge number, which is a benefit to our members. We hold monthly business after hours events, business before hours events for people to socialize and meet each other, gives another networking opportunity, so that's pretty traditional as well. We publish a guidebook, which also lists all the businesses, geared primarily toward visitors as well as the accommodations industry, during the summertime. Businesses also have a presence on our website. We also extend that out to non-members as well, nonprofits, the faith community, the town, and the organizations, where we take their information and we publish it in many different forms. We do that through through our weekly e-blasts that go out, through our kiosk here in Town Hall Square, through our website, and then also through 2 programs where we also host a This Week in Falmouth television program that is on our website, as well as FCTV, and I also host the Falmouth in Focus. So in a nutshell, what the Chamber really tries to do is work with everybody and collaborate for the benefit for the entire community. So I don't know if you have any questions.
Questions from the board?
No questions, you've answered them all.
I had requested that this be on an agenda because I think your work with the businesses in the community and the collaboration, I just wanted the board to get a flavor of what you do, because I think it's incredibly helpful in educating the town and bringing the town together, all the different aspects.
I think one thing, if I want to look back at the last year, that I'm really proud of what we did was, we understand, and the businesses understand, that plastics are a problem and they're an issue. And when there was a petitioner's article to remove plastic immediately, we were not opposed to the removal of plastic, but our whole premise was that the entire community, including business owners, should be part of the solution and given time. So we reached out to the petitioner, and I'm really happy to say that everyone got together. I know that there are people, I know that we worked together, Madam Chair, on that committee that was selected, and we couldn't be happier, because I think that's how we'll get to the end, where we know that has to happen, but it's through process, through understanding, listening to each other, and collaborating, and that's really helpful.
I thought you did a great job on town meeting floor
Appreciate it,
on that
thank you.
issue.
Yeah.
All right.
I would just comment that
Go right ahead.
I appreciate the work you've done, and I think the chamber's never been stronger or in better hands.
I appreciate it. And I really appreciate the support we get from the town, and it's been delightful. In the short term that Mr. Renshaw's been here, we've had some conversation and work together, and of course, I've always found the select board to be really supportive, and really love, the focus on housing, which, as you know, is a big impact, and where we're also very involved in with education, so.
It goes both ways, too, and you're very approachable, and that makes it easy to engage with you, so thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, so we will move to business number 8. Mr. Renshaw, approve Fourth Amendment and extension of existing parking lot lease agreement with the Steamship Authority. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 5 minutes, and I'll try to beat that. I wanted to give an update. It was, I think, October, one of the October meetings. I first presented this Fourth Amendment and extension of the lease agreement. As an update, I wanted the Select Board to know that based upon some emails that were received in terms of what had been done historically, and specifically involving an appraisal on the property. Staff and I did significant amount of research and did come across a 2015 appraisal on the 4.8, almost 5-acre lot. Sales comparison methodology and some elements of the income-based approach were utilized by the appraiser that conducted the study for us. Fair market, fee simple interest of the property, the fair market value is about $1.9 million, and based upon that, the appraiser provided an annual fair market rent of about $153,000. Again, I wanted the Select Board to know, because that had been kind of the focus of some questions via email that we had received. Real quickly, Madam Chair and Select Board members, as you all recall, we've been through 3 iterations or amendments of the original lease agreement that was signed off on in 2015. The current lease agreement that we're operating under was first executed in 15. There had been 3 previous amendments. I won't go through all of those details because I'd just be reiterating what I stated back in October. And speaking with Town Council, following the last presentation, Town Council and I feel it's important that, number one, we obtain a new appraisal. It's been 8 years, so we feel it's important to do that. And also take a closer look at basically the structure and the elements of the lease agreement itself, and more than likely come back with a new lease agreement, kind of eliminating the 2015 version of it. So, Madam Chair and Select Board, what I'm recommending this evening is that the Select Board approve the Fourth Amendment to the lease agreement that's included in your packet. This is a 1-year lease agreement. It would expire, if approved tonight, it would become effective January 1st and would expire December 31st of 2024. Madam Chair and Select Board members, we feel that this 1-year extension of the current lease would give us that time, again, to obtain that appraisal of the property, an updated appraisal, and also work through some of the other elements of the lease agreement to get it in compliance with some 30B provisions and whatnot. So that's my recommendation. The board approved the Fourth Amendment as presented in the packet this evening. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Muscali?
Just one question. Why the reduction in the number of village permit holders from 60 to 50?
Great question, Madam Chair and Select Board member. The reason for that, in discussions, I had 3 meetings actually with General Manager Bob Davis. And he provided, and I can provide the Select Board the information, I didn't include it in the packet tonight, some of the actual usage data. They track that usage data as far as the village permit holders. And it was significantly less than the 60 that was initially. I think it was at 42, I believe, was the average number of village permit holders. So it's based on observed data. And there were some elements in the third agreement, in the previous 2015 base agreement, that required the town and the authority to go back and review those numbers, the actual usage numbers, from time to time. General Manager Davis and I did that in October. We began that review. And again, the actual number was 42 village permit holders that he provided evidence of that data. They tracked that. So we reduced the number from, I think the high was 60. They wanted a lesser number, and we landed at 50 spaces for this one-year extension.
And I have heard from comments from business owners that they're surprised that it doesn't get more use. So, and I do want to comment that I see that you have put some additional provisions in for additional signage, as some residents had requested about idling vehicles and so forth. So there are some new stipulations, and I feel like the 1 year is a reasonable request. So
I would agree. So do I have a motion?
is there a written motion?
Excuse me, Mr. Finneran? This is not a hearing, so I'm going to hold that for 1 minute. I'm sorry.
I don't have any other questions or comments myself.
Did you have anything else,
Nothing
Mr.
else.
Zelinski? Go ahead, Mr. Finneran.
I actually have 3 questions on this. Was there any increase in the parking allowed for businesses in Woods Hole? I know the last one, we gave them like 20 spaces. There is a serious shortage.
Well, that's what we just
I
discussed.
thought we just talked about that.
That was what
Is
we
that
just
different?
talked about. The fact that it had been
No,
40,
I'm-
it had been 40 and,
No, those are village permits. That's like people in the village.
Right.
They separated an area of 20 spaces last time, didn't they, for the businesses in Woods Hole to use?
yes, there had
Was
been,
that
there had
added?
been 40, and the last time we revised this, we went up to 60, and then town manager just finished explaining that the current
I
usage.
thought those were permits given to residents of Woods Hole that you're speaking
No,
of.
this is a business parking.
It's my understanding.
Yeah, business.
Yeah, it's referred to as the village permit holders, but it's my understanding that they've been used traditionally for businesses.
Because there's been a lack of use, it's actually being reduced from the 60 to
Really?
50.
That's quite amazing. And second is, did we raise the price any?
No, the share is 75-25 based upon, I think it was the second amendment when that transitioned. And it's interesting, some of the information that we were able to uncover goes back to, again, the base agreement goes back to, I think, 2000, maybe even prior to that. And at the time, it was based upon a flat rate divided with quarterly payments that approximated $150,000. It wasn't exact. It was some time, and I still haven't been able to put my hands, and I'll be honest, on this information. It's in somebody's file folder. I haven't been able to find it, where we made the decision to transition from the quarterly payments to this, based upon the appraised value and that fair market rent amount that I mentioned, the 153. At some point, we made the decision through negotiations to amend that to shift to a 75-25, whereby the authority receives 75% of the receipts
Of the
and
actual
town-
receipts.
and through the sale of the permits, the parking permits, and the town receives 25%. And honestly, Madam Chair, Select Board, the reason why that decision was made, I think that underlies the fact that we need to kind of go back and revisit again that entire agreement. Gives us an opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
And your third question?
Well, that kind of eliminates my third question, but I'll substitute this one. I mean, if it's our land, how come we're not splitting with them 50-50? You would think. I mean, they've recently raised all their prices, and the Steamship Authority really isn't famous for treating the town of Falmouth that well, in my opinion. So I think a 50-50 split would be more in line.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Finneran. Yes, quickly.
Patrick Masterson, I'm Vice Chair of the Woods Hole Business Association. And I just wanted to say thank you for the allocated spaces. They're a great resource for our employee parking, especially during those really busy summer months. Since if you've been in the Woods Hole, there's not much down there. So I just wanted to introduce myself and then look forward to talking to you more about renewing the lease going further, as we review that information.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I would move approval of the lease as presented.
Second that, Madam Chair.
Okay.
The one, yeah. Is it written?
Yeah, let's take a look at the written. Motion to approve the application, oh, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong one. Do we have a
Oh,
written motion?
Here it is,
Yeah,
option
can
one,
you do the-
motion.
Please,
I
thank
make a
you.
motion to approve the Fourth Amendment and extension of lease agreement between the town and the Steamship Authority as presented, with a term to expire December 31st, 2024.
Second is.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for your work on that, Mr. Renshaw, that was unanimous. Okay, we're going to move on to the application for change of manager of an all-alcoholic club license, Portuguese American Association of Falmouth, Inc., located at 55 Ashumet Road, Hatchville. Mr. Renshaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Real quickly, as background summary, I'm not sure if the applicant is here this evening. The proposed new manager is Mr. Michael Duarte Jr., and the last approved manager, as indicated in the application, which is included in your packets, was Robert P. Kudbuchek. I apologize if I'm mispronounced. Madam Chair, all of the required documentation associated with this change of manager application was received by the Select Board Office and processed as of November 28th of this year. Falmouth PD and Falmouth Fire Rescue Departments have also reviewed the application and have stated they have no objections to the application's approval. As a result, it's my recommendation that the Select Board approve the application for a change of manager of an all-alcoholic beverages restaurant license as presented.
Do we have the applicant here?
Yep.
First thing, Kubicek, can you pronounce your last name for us?
No, my name is Michael
I'm sorry.
Duarte.
You are Michael Duarte.
That one I got.
Okay,
Robert
I've got
Kubicek
him.
was Megan Braga's
Was-
husband, yeah.
Got it. Okay. Any questions
I
for
could
Mr.
just-
Duarte?
I would comment that I've worked with Mr. Duarte at the Elks Club on the fish fry team, and he's a great leader, and I think he would make a very good manager.
I would second that. He's got his finger on the pulse of that club. He knows everybody that's in and out of there, and his staff is very professional. So I would support this as well.
So would someone like to make a motion, and it is written? Would you like me to read the motion?
Sure.
I won't move it. Motion to approve the application for a change of manager of an all-alcoholic beverages club license for the Portuguese American Association of Falmouth, Inc., located at 55 Ashumet Road, Hatchville, as presented.
I'll move Madam Chair's motion as described. I mean, my motion as described by the chair.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye. Thank you guys very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good job.
Okay, we will move on to consider the letter of support on Bill 1315. Mr. Renshaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Steamship Authority, which has been the subject of a previous agenda item, has long played a critical role in facilitating and coordinating the transportation of people, cars, and necessary provisions for the Cape and Island communities. Although the role which the authority plays in the logistical support of our communities is widely recognized and understood, it's also widely recognized that the vehicle and truck traffic that the authority's operations generate also at times have a very negative impact on the quality of life of our community. At this time, the islands of Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard control 70% of the voting power for the authority, which results in their ability to take unilateral actions and therefore creating a power imbalance, which tends to disenfranchise some of the mainland towns. It's important that all towns, mainland and island, receive equal representation in regard to the decision-making process. Madam Chair, Select Board members, Senate Bill 1315 as written, entitled An Act Relative to Municipal Equity in Steamship Authority Operations, would amend the Enabling Act of the Steamship Authority to provide more equitable representation to the towns of Falmouth, Barnstable, and New Bedford by requiring that for any action to be taken by the authority on a matter in which the towns of Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket vote the same way, there must also be a vote of at least one of the members of Falmouth, Barnstable, or New Bedford in agreement with the Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket votes. Madam Chair, you have included in your packets a sample draft letter with the chairman's name as signature. I'm recommending that the Select Board vote to approve and transmit a letter, a draft letter, of the Select Board's choosing. We can certainly edit and modify the existing letter in support of Senator Moran's Senate Bill 1315, and again, authorize the chair to sign the letter.
Discussion?
Question?
Yeah, I would say I would speak in favor of this supportive letter. I did actually submit a letter of my own individually to the speakers.
Representing
the speakers.
Us?
No, just representing myself. I did mention that I was select board chair and the representative designated as the long-range planning task force member, but I didn't represent the board, just that I'm a member of the board.
Well, I certainly support Senator Moran's bill. I think we should issue a letter of support.
I'll get behind it.
Okay, do you want to make a motion?
Doug, you already wrote the letter. You want to make the motion?
I would make a motion that we authorize the chair and the town manager to forward a letter similar to this with any minor adjustments that may be deemed acceptable by the chair.
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, we'll move on to approve annual license renewals for 2024. Mr. Renshaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The annual renewal applications and checklists of all required documents and payments due were sent to all of the licensees. Madam Chair and Select Board, the below-listed licensees have submitted all of the renewal requirements on the applicable checklist, and the licenses are ready to be reviewed and approved for renewal for 2024. Madam Chair, it's my recommendation that Select Board approve the license renewals for 2024 as printed on tonight's agenda.
Madam Chairman?
Anything anyone would like to hold?
I do recognize that we have one abutter who I think wants to comment on one of the licenses for
So let's
timber. and
call
I'd
out
like
the
to
license.
hold that just for comment by the
That's one I was
abutter.
holding.
Okay, so are there any other licenses that you would like to hold, but we can go ahead and approve as presented,
Madam Chair,
leaving
I'd
off timber? What are you doing?
I'm trying to get out of here. I'd make a motion to approve as presented with the exception of timber as a whole. Sorry about that.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to move the licenses as presented while holding timber. Motion and a second.
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous? Did you vote, Mr. Muscat?
I did. I
Okay, so that's unanimous, however, we're going to hold timber. Would you like to speak to that license, please? Okay,
Yeah, you came early.
Very eloquent speakers tonight. I enjoyed it, I have to say. I'm going to be brief. Didn't even take my notes, no glasses. So, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Town Manager Renshaw, Mr. Johnson-Staub. Linda Samortis, Main Street, direct abutter of timber, maybe 12 feet behind, day, and more importantly, night, as I always say. So when we last met to discuss this, the end of August, it was the compliance hearing, if I'm not mistaken, and Timber did put up their soundproofing, and Eddie represented Timber that night, as I represented the condo association where we are tonight. Eddie no longer there, to my knowledge. I think he was amazing at what he did, and it was quiet. It was acceptable. It was a kumbaya moment, our last meeting. I gave it a 7 out of 10, if that matters, kind of like my pain scale most of the time, but it was kumbaya that night. And but since then, you have my letter. It's slowly but surely going up again. I just don't think there was enough soundproofing panels put up. I remember Mr. Patterson saying that too, for the size of that building and knowledge that he had of things like that I don't have. I hate to bother the police. You have my letter, the calls. There are nights that I don't call the police. I just feel so bad doing that, but it is my peace of mind. And so you have the dates of when I called in the letter. Since then, last Saturday, called the bar. It took twice to get through to them, and actually called the police twice as well. It was out of control. When I finally got through to the new manager, there's such a change there. His name was Ryan. He said, we're doing the best we can. It's a new band. This band hasn't played here before. So, I'll ask them to turn it down. That should be discussed ahead of time. They knew there was a problem. I mean, all the months that they operated without the license showed that there was a problem. I feel bad that Eddie isn't there. I just think he had the management under control. And, in my letter, I mentioned that when I called early December, another out-of-control evening, Mr. Bagagian was on the premises. I'm sure that's a rare occurrence, so AKA Longfellow. So we had a little discussion. He definitely knew who I was. And one thing he said to me that was kind of sour was, you're going to hear something. I mean, he was a little offhand about things, left me sour. If we turn it down, the patrons on the Axe side will not be able to hear it. That is not my problem, but it's become my problem. In his business, in a building that size, he should be able to move where the band is located, maybe more to the center of the building. It's a very large, long building. It's old and it's thin, and it's just starting all over again. I want it to be kumbaya. I hate bothering y'all with all this. There's so many really important things, but it is my peace of mind. So, I hung out for 2 hours just to say that. I want to thank you all, for listening to me in the past and for hearing, and for having them put up the soundproofing. I feel very instrumental in that, in the fact that you made that happen. So I don't know what's next. I don't know.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
Mr. Mortis?
Yes.
So, in your statement, you said that at one point it was working. And
Yes.
you feel like it was the management making it work. So
I do.
the construction that took place was satisfying.
Yes, a 7 out of 10. Everybody was happy that night when I left. We had banter that night. Eddie said, we're working with you, and I even remember saying, well, you haven't invited me over yet for a cocktail and to see where, please come, that whole thing. And then, I don't know when he left, but it's just tanked.
So if you had your druthers, it would be to tighten up the management skill, not, you stated that they had eliminated the noise to your benefit.
Yes.
Okay, so it's more of a management request than
I don't
a
know
construction.
what else it could be.
Okay.
How could it be
Thank you.
good for so long, and
Thank
then
you,
all
Madam
of a
Chair.
sudden it's not anymore? I don't understand.
Any comments from the board? What would the board like to do?
I note Mr. Bogosian's here, maybe he can comment on what may have caused the change? If that's possible?
Sure.
Good evening. Happy to be here tonight to come support timber and give a little bit of outlook on it. As you guys are familiar, I'm an investor in this company. This is not an active business for myself. But I've recently tried to take a better interest in the entertainment and overall success of the business to make sure that they can be sustainable. The night that I was there, I took the call because I personally was watching a single guitar player play not loud enough that I could hear it at the other side. It was very soft. And I think that from a management standpoint, being there myself, seeing when Eddie's there, whether he's at the Flying Bridge or Ryan's there and there's only 20 patrons in there, that if there's entertainment and someone's awake 12 feet out, no matter how much I soundproof that building, you're going to hear it, whether it's the radio, whether it's the, Bob Ament and Kevin and good friends of mine, they can hear the axes when they hit the wall if they're paying attention or if their windows are open. But it's the nature of being in that business zone. So as much as we are maintaining it, talking to the artists, working to try to be the best neighborly I can see. And I applaud Mike and Eddie and Rich and Ryan for countless amounts of oversight that I see going in there. And that's where I personally wanted to make sure I'm seeing it firsthand, and then I'm also going to come to the meeting to make sure I can speak to it myself. So I would say I don't know what else you can do to be that close to a commercial business and a business zone and have the business be successful without not having any entertainment or any different items.
There's a discrepancy here, however. You're saying band, you're saying one single guitarist. That, to me, is very different.
But we've always had, when you look at that, so when I was there, there's a mix. There's very, very rarely, there's not like, they don't have the budget, and this is coming from the finance end of it, to have there's a drum player and a guitar player and a singer. There'll be often duos. There's a duo from North Falmouth, who is that?
It's an acoustical. This was acoustical.
I'm sorry?
This was acoustical when it was presented in the beginning.
That's where I was sort of going.
Yeah, so it's amplified meaning they plug into their amp, and it's not, that's just a tradition, just like you'd see at anywhere on Main Street, or, it's not like just in a private room with someone just playing just based off the strings. But it's not, this is not something that, the soundproofing definitely helps. They're trying to keep, we've seen their numbers drop. So they're doing live music, I believe, one night a week right now. They're trying to do more, but the budget's tough to just keep it going. And their numbers have dropped dramatically since they're trying to continue to, work with the community as a whole and listen to what this is. But I just think that this is not a non-conforming special use if I look at where this business is located. Because I have a lot of businesses and a lot of real estate that is in specific areas, and they've been there forever, and that's what it is. This is a downtown Falmouth environment where I'm applauding how much they're trying to put into it, and I appreciate that you can hear it, and that's why I have supported their endeavors of trying to make it better and, make it the best it can be. But I'm worried that this is going to be an ongoing, they'll continue to do their best. They've got great teams and management, and that's why they're all here tonight, and that's why they were proactive in being here tonight. Although this was hopefully just a quick, not needed to come in.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr.
Do you suppose by chance the lower numbers of patrons make it louder in there? Because when there's more people in there, they suck up a lot more of the sound.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Mr. Brown?
So we've heard from the neighbor that it was working, and now it seems to be going the other way. That's what I was hoping to hear about. Is there something that you might be able to identify that's being done differently?
I don't understand. I wouldn't understand that. I don't know how that. I'm happy that it was working at some point, but there's nothing that I can pinpoint that's changed. And being there myself, that's one of the reasons why I started to go on some of the nights there was entertainment, and I just would pop in, because I wanted to double check it. I didn't want to come here tonight and say, hey, listen, I can personally tell you that I've double checked that. That's why, as you mentioned, that I was there and I was watching the entertainment, and I was watching to make sure that I could come stand up here and say they're doing everything right.
Hold on. Anything from the board? Any comments? Any questions?
I wish I could think of a good question. If there's not anything we can identify that's different, that's tricky.
Can you speak to the issue of change in management as possibly having some reason why the neighbor seems to be upset?
I think that the number one thing Eddie would do differently than anyone else is he's a very, very easy, quiet, nice spirited guy that will take a lot of time, and the difference is not as far as management skill set and whatnot. He's helps with the Flying Bridge and that. Mike, who firefighter, who's their owner, he's there all the time. I know Ryan said he was on the phone 3 different times last Saturday night. So they're not to be on the phone 3 times and trying to say, hey, this is what we're doing. We've double-checked the volumes. We've done this. That, they're trying to address it, not ignoring it. And that's also why tonight we felt it was important to come here and be here.
How would the board like to proceed?
I think that what we're up against is the fact that it was a bowling alley, and now it's an entertainment place, and it's new, we're breaking new ground, so it's gonna take maybe an extra level of caution. I think that's where we're really at. And I think when we really first approved it, maybe we didn't quite take into consideration how close that residence is. So, yeah.
I come down a little bit on the other side of that. I mean, it provides jobs for quite a few people. And I have a firm belief if it was working through management at one point, they shouldn't be jeopardized. They've proven that it can work, and I think that I would lean towards my approval of it, urging them to continue or to enhance that behavior, to try to make Mr. Samoitis a little more happy. But I can't see punishing the employees and the people that are gainfully employed there without giving it some kind of push forward at this point.
Oh, I agree with that. I'm just trying to look for some kind of, any suggestion that we can get that might improve it.
May I speak from here?
No, you have to go up to the podium.
You want to help me? Here we go, about time. I'm just going to go back to why it worked before and it's not working now. And there had to be a band before or a DJ, and after the compliance, it worked. I came here and said, it's working, thank you. I don't understand the change. It's the same building, the same people, what's the change? It's just so frustrating. Mr. Bogosian said Mr. Ament can hear the axe. He's there during the day. He's not there at night. Nobody around there is there at night. I definitely hear the bowling pins. I heard it when it was Ryan's. I lived there. I really don't, not to keep beating this dead horse, but I don't know how it got approved initially. Richie and I were in the process of closing on that property, but if we had been notified that that's what was going to happen, the Marzats owned it previously, you would have gotten to know me before now. I would have said, how can you do this with us so close? I'm there at night. Mr. Bogosian, everything around there is his, nobody's gonna complain. God bless him. But he is an investor. Mr. Mueller is an investor. My ex was in the same business. I know about this kind of investing. I don't know, where. I love music. Last night I watched Willie Nelson with Keith Richards and Snoop Dogg. Loved every minute of it. Got nothing to do with that, but it's peace of mind. Why should I have to be on a medication and then have it be all over, social media, old lady, take a pill? It's ridiculous. Only since this happened. I don't know what, and may I also ask, is the time still 11 o'clock for the cutoff? I forgot to ask that. And not 1?
It would be the same as
same.
what they applied for. It's a
Hasn't
renewal.
changed, no.
So that means 11.
It means a renewal.
Well, I don't know what that means.
It means they're renewing what was approved
What it was.
previously.
Okay,
Right.
I get it, okay.
So let me go back to the board. How does the board want to move forward on this?
I personally tend to agree with Mr. Zelinski. I think it has been approved, it was working. I think I call upon the investors, managers to take a little closer look at it, maybe tighten up the ship a little bit. It's obviously a concern of the board. You don't want to have to come back for another compliance hearing or anything like that. So, but I'm prepared to go forward with it in the hopes that you understand that it's an issue and one that needs to be addressed, followed up on.
With the caution that at one point it was working. So I think you do need to go back and take a look at what was making it work and what's changed. Let me finish. Something has shifted. And so I think it is incumbent upon the business to figure out what that shift was and to resolve it.
One of the thoughts I have on this, and this is something that I wonder if is what is causing the shift, is the consistency.
Speak to the board. Speak to the board, please. Thank you.
The consistency of the bowling, it's a consistent noise. It's like if you're living in the city and you hear traffic. So you're hearing that bowling. And it's, if anything, we're playing music less now than we ever did. There's consistent quiet, meaning if we're only going one night a week, when we first opened, it was 5 nights a week. It was often, right? And then I'm just trying to see what's different. Do you know what and in being in there myself and not hearing this really loud music, saying anything to your point of hearing the bowling, if you're hearing people drop the ball down in bowling, you're seeing that it's hard to play anything of anything that's, meaning it's clearly you're going to hear anything going on in that building. And anything that's a different change from a quiet night where we're over there tonight and there's nothing really happening. There's a few people just having dinner and it's very quiet. It's going to be closing shortly. But on the weekends when there's any music, meaning it's not like that consistent I'm trying to come up with what's changing.
You need to come up with that while it's happening, not right now. If I may, you see what the general consensus is. It's for you as gentlemen to work this out with them, all right, and make it work. Because you're going to come back before us again, and if it doesn't get fixed, we're going to have the same discussion and the same concerns, except this time we're going to see that it didn't happen. The fact that it did happen at one point proves that it can happen again. And that's what we're looking for, I think, if I speak for the rest of my colleagues here.
Exactly.
We don't need any more explanation on how to do it. You just need to try to do it.
Right. I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
You still going to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we extend the all-alcohol restaurant with common victual license for Timber at 23 Town Hall Square.
I'll second Mr. Muscali's motion, Madam Chair.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you for coming in.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the consent agenda.
We'll have that cocktail.
Okay, I'm going to read through.
Good night.
You're-
You too.
Same to you. I'm going to read through the consent agenda. If any member would like to hold an item, please notify me. Administrative orders. Approve the petition of N-Star Electric Company doing business as Eversource Energy for permission to install one new FO pole labeled 10-136 with anchor approximately 137 feet east of the existing pole 10-135, and to install one new FO pole labeled 10-137 with anchor approximately 137 feet east of the newly installed pole of 10-136. This work is necessary to provide electric services to 995 Sandwich Road. Approve the petition of N-Star Electric Company doing business as Eversource Energy for permission to install a new handhold to be labeled 6956A and to install approximately 58 feet of conduit and cable under the town road southeasterly starting at new handhold 6956A at the base of the existing pole 6956. This work is necessary to provide electric service to 301 Minot Road. Accept a donation in the amount of $500 from the Falmouth Jewish Congregation to the Falmouth Cultural Council. Approve Eversource easements for Depot Road and Locust Street. Designate the per diem communications officer position as a special employee for the purpose of the Conflict of Interest Law, MGL, Chapter 268A. I'll entertain a motion to move the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to move the consent agenda. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's get on to the minutes. Review and vote to approve the minutes of the public session, July 10th, 2023.
Since I can't really remember, I'll just say that I'll move approval. I did read them.
I'm
and I
good
didn't
with them.
see anything
So
wrong.
second that approval.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the public session minutes of July 10, 2023. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Renshaw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Real quickly, I just wanted to give the board an update regarding a tour I took on December 7th. I was invited to participate in a walking tour of each of the main Falmouth Housing Authority facilities. Those included the Salt Sea Apartments, Mayflower, Rose Morin Apartments, Harborview Apartments, Tetekit, always mispronounce that, Apartments, and the Bayberry House. Included in your packet is kind of an overview of those facilities. Tour was organized and facilitated by the executive director, Ms. Bobby Richards, and the chair, Mr. Stephen Patton, attended as well. Tour really provided me kind of an up-close look at the current facilities and some of the challenges that they have with regards to maintenance. I think one of the more interesting developments, I encouraged Bobby to start attending our monthly department head meetings. I figured that dialogue and communication, you can never get too much of that. It would be a good opportunity for her to attend some of those meetings and kind of get plugged in to what's going on in town government, and we could hear some of the issues and concerns that they have as well. I understand completely separate entity, but I thought it was a good effort to have more dialogue and communication between Town Hall and in her office. Secondly, wanted to advise the board that once again, the Falmouth Town Marina has been recognized by Marina.com by winning the very prestigious 2023 Elite Fleet Award. You probably all know this, but I'll restate it. To be recognized, a marina must receive at least 10 verified user reviews with a score of 4.7 out of 5 or higher. In 2023, Greg Frazier tells me that Falmouth Town Marina actually received 58 such reviews, which is fantastic. And I'd ask the board to join me in congratulating Mr. Greg Frazier with MES and all the outstanding staff. We're very fortunate to have such talented and dedicated staff in the town of Falmouth. And lastly, I wanted to give an update, and this is really exciting news, on the two police social worker positions. Human Resources and the Police Department worked very closely together and are pleased and happy to report that they filled both of the newly created police social worker positions with very highly qualified personnel. Our first police social worker, Ms. Stephanie Doherty, started on November 27th, and our second, Ms. Molly Marshall, started today, actually, December 18th. Stephanie was most recently the Emergency Services Program Director for Bay Cove, and Molly was most recently a senior counselor for Gosnold and is a Falmouth resident who's very enthusiastic about serving her community. Madam Chair and board members, both Stephanie and Molly have an LICSW designation certification, which is the preferred qualification for the position that will allow them to issue Section 12's emergency restraint and hospitalization of persons posing risk of serious harm to themselves or others by reason of mental illness. This qualification is going to provide more efficient continuity of care and free the police officers to focus on other priorities. We're going to introduce both Molly and Stephanie at the January 8th meeting. Chief Laurie is going to make sure that they're available to introduce themselves, and we'll formally welcome them to Team Falmouth. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? The clinical social workers, because they can section, the LICSWs, will they be available to work? I know that, sometimes over at 704 Main Street, there are some issues that they may need that kind of support. So I'm hoping that Chief Laurie would be willing to work with other people in the community that call the police for a certain issue, and if a social worker were available to evaluate, that would be really.
I'll make a note to speak with the chief. I'm not aware of any prohibitions or restrictions on that. But we'll certainly make it a point to mention it to the chief.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, let's move to select board reports, and I would like to start. I just have a couple of things for the board. You heard that there has been a request for a community forum with South Coast Wind. I'd like to get the board's feedback on whether we need to move forward with that, or if Mr. Brown has any updates.
I'll just comment that I reported to the board that I did attend that Oak Grove Cemetery meeting, and it was really just an outreach from the South Coast to the Oak Grove folks to gauge what their concerns would be should they move forward. They didn't announce that they were, just that they were I got the sense that they didn't have a lot to do, so they were just keeping busy by reaching out to the neighbors. That's,
I guess I just didn't know, I thought that you had not been in communication monthly, because there
we
weren't
have
any
not been.
updates.
That-
Okay,
It was
and
the
that was-
cemetery board of directors that reached out to me
Okay,
and said that, just want to let you know that South Coast has reached out to us as an abutter and wants to just come meet with us and ask us questions, which is really exactly what they did.
okay, but you haven't had any updates from them directly, okay.
That was the only interaction
that's
I've
what-
had with them, and I
South
really was
Coast.
there more as an observer.
Okay,
And I did ask them at that meeting if there were any ongoing plans to renew the initiative in Falmouth. And she said, in fact, there was not, to her knowledge, any initiatives in
Okay.
Falmouth. And that they, in fact, were looking at other sites and vetting 2 other sites particularly.
Okay.
One is to bring all their energy to Somerset, and another one is to consider the Canal Electric Plant. That was 2 that she knew of, and she believes that they are potentially looking at other sites that she may not be aware of.
okay, so I'm going to hold on that. Another thing is, we need 2 select board members to start looking at the evaluation process of the town manager. Do I have any volunteers?
I'll do it.
I'd be willing to do it. I don't know.
Okay,
I may be less qualified than some, but I'd be willing to.
all right, that would be awesome. Okay, and I just want to confirm our March 2nd date for our workshop. And
Okay.
my last thing was, I was lucky enough to be invited to meet with Troop 41 of Scouts, and they came here on December 11th, and we talked about local government, and they were wonderful and bright and thoughtful, and it was a great thing to do on a Monday night when I'm not here. All right, other select board reports. Mr. Muscally?
Yes, sure, I'll start. On December 5th, I attended the Council on Aging committee meeting, and they mentioned that there are now 7,297 registrants at the Falmouth Senior Center. As my colleagues saw today, the Senior Center is doing a wonderful job, and Jill Bishop and her staff just continue to outpace what was ever done there before. I attended a bicycle and pedestrian committee meeting on December 6th. There was much disappointment as to the position with respect to the rail to trail. They continue to want to advocate for the alternative. There were questions raised about the responsibility for accidents, or who should be notified about accidents on the bike path. I guess there's some question about police, EMTs, who they should be going to if something happens on the bike path. A woman who was pretty seriously injured was there speaking to the committee, expressing the concern that there didn't seem to be really anyone she could go to or see what was going on. So I think they're going to be asking for some guidance at some point. What's Scott?
Shouldn't that be on an agenda? If they want, I mean, we're kind of discussing, oh, were you asking a question?
No, I'm just reporting that that's what she said, that there was a question. I think someone may have called the police, and the police said it's not our job, and something along those lines, and I think the committee was going to bring some, I found it surprising
Yeah,
that
me
there was a concern. And then finally, I was at the rec committee meeting on December 13th. There's, as noted in the paper, considerable disappointment with the online sign-up for pickleball, and there's, I believe, a letter coming from the committee to overstep the online access and go back to in-person registration. And I also understand that the sound study has been completed for the Trotting Park pickleball fields.
We have a draft.
Draft, okay, that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
So I just comment that first of all, I didn't pay attention. I have a text from Carissa April apologizing that she's not feeling well this evening and unable to attend, so that was what happened with that. I noticed that the planning board took up the short-term rental for their initial discussion of it on their meeting on Tuesday last week. And I hope we can sometime soon hear from town council on any progress they may have made looking into it, because we talked about that at our last workshop on Saturday, and we talked quite a bit about it, and they said that they had some ideas about it, so I'd like to hear those if we could. I attended the Cape and Islands Municipal Leaders Association last week and a half ago. The biggest item on that day was the dredge rates are going to be going up significantly. They are at $12 now per yard and $16 with a pump. The projected is going to be $22 for 2025, and it only goes to $24 with the pump, so the pump is less of an expense. Mobilization fees are up significantly, and I did get Mr. Cirillo to commit that if we bundled our permits, they would still only charge us one mobilization fee. So for instance, if we do Great Pond and Green Pond together, they only charge us one mobilization fee. But by the time we get to if you're 2029, we're looking at $34.10 with no booster and $35.60 with a booster. So dredging is going to get significantly more expensive, although it'll still be a lot cheaper than a private dredge. The private dredges are like $50 a yard, so.
We're buying one.
Oh, yeah.
Anything else?
No, that's it for me.
Okay, Mr. Zelinski.
Madam Chair, I did my warm-up with the Cape Cod Metropolitan Planning Organization today, so I attended that virtually. They do that once a month virtually. I officially start on in January, but I was a viewing participant in the meeting today, so I got my feet wet over there today. That's all I have.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion and
I'll second it.
second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.